Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maria O'Neill. I'm currently the CIO of a company called American Bureau of Shipping. I've been there 11 years, and I'm getting ready to take early retirement, so I'm in a really good mood. Nonetheless, we have some brilliant women with us here today that are here to talk about women in technology and what we can do to support one another. So we're going to be talking to you for the next hour. I'm going to be asking questions and letting them provide you with brilliant answers. But the first thing we want to do is just have the panel introduce themselves and say who you are, where you work, and a little bit about yourself, okay?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paula Stuart. I'm the CIO of Crescent Energy. We're an oil and gas company here in Houston. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all about women in technology and technology altogether. So please, if you have questions or want to talk more about certain topics, let us know. We're here for you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dolly Kripalani. I work for a company called onsemi. It is a semiconductor manufacturing company based in Phoenix. I head their digital transformation journey. Previous to that, I was with National of Varco, one of the oil and gas companies here. Been there for 18 years, so I'm excited to be here and talk about women in technology.
Thank you. So my name is Ivelisse Torres, and I am currently a director at ABM in the CISO office. I've been at ABM now about a year. Did most of my career in oil and gas and made the transition to the service industry, and I'm having a ton of fun building out the security program there.
Hello, my name is Crystal Chatham Grant. I've been in security for about 13 years and in IT a total of 16. I'm currently head of security for Legal Badge and interim, I should say, and also I'm a part of a consulting firm, Chatam Group, where we focus on information security, physical security, and just helping school districts. Happy to be here. Happy to answer any questions as well.
So I think it's great that we're seeing more and more women in technology. I can remember a day back in my day where I might have been the only person in a room full of men. So it just thrills me to see more and more women coming up the ranks. And I also think that the men like it too, because we, I think, offer a diversity of thinking and addressing problems, and together we come up with much better solutions. So it's great to see that, seeing more and more women entering the technology workforce. But I want to start out by asking Dolly a question. Dolly, what do you think we need to do to advocate for women in technology? And in particular, what programs do we need to put in place to encourage women to pursue technical careers?
Yeah, sure. I guess everybody here at the panel at least can identify with women starting in team of all male-dominated IT groups. Me, 20 plus years ago, that's exactly where I started. And when I looked around, it was like you were talking about the diversity, right, of the thought. So how do we encourage women to get there, right? All of us here as leaders, I feel, carry this currency, right? And this currency is important and is very valuable, and I'll tell you why. We have the seat at the table with the C-suite and the other leaders who influence the organization. So I feel that we have an opportunity to promote and talk about women, because if you think about it, one of the things that I've realized working and mentoring other women is they don't typically speak up. The voices are sometimes lost, or we always talk about something called imposter syndrome, right? So all of these things kind of make our voices muted a little bit, right? So as leaders, what can we do? We can advocate. We can advocate for women and diversity, not just women. I mean, think about diverse cultures and diversity across the globe. So I feel that we have an opportunity and we can use our currency, that I call it, as leaders to help navigate some of this. So, and the second part of the question, I guess, what programs can we put in place? The org development group has been very, very good, at least in my previous roles. They have helped not only just educate, but also community programs and just give opportunity to women to fill that gap wherever they have, whether it be technology, whether it be speaking, whether it be making their thoughts visible. So these are the kind of programs that I feel like we need to be part of and encourage and be mentoring other women to be participating in those.
Very good. And does anybody else have anything they want to add to that? And specifically also on how do we support women as they're moving up the career ladder? What can we do to encourage them?
So in some of the organizations that I've worked for, they have diversity and inclusive groups. One of which, let's say, for instance, JP Morgan, they had one where it was about women in technology there. And what you found was it wasn't just women that was a part of the group, it was also men. And these men were advocates for the women that were a part of the group. So you were able to kind of build these relationships, have allies, and have those who want to mentor you and help guide you throughout your career. In order to work on some of the challenges that you have, whether it's speaking up in a conference room or just presenting. And so that was one of the things that I noticed that was very helpful, even with being in consulting, is just being a part of those diversity groups and building your connections.
So I think as part of being in the C-suite at our company as a CIO and being in a room mostly with men, especially in oil and gas, I've often been the only female CIO in oil and gas. And there's great benefit in that. I think that I've helped those individuals see that as long as us as women come to the table fully prepared, understanding what our roles are and understanding our knowledge, then it's natural that we're going to add to the conversations. And so I think when we have women at the C-suite like myself and others in my company, it shows that there isn't a division. It's a 50-50. We need women as much as we need men in these roles. It is not all about only being women or only being men. So I think this is a big message as well. We're going to start to see that women are more in C-suite roles. It might take us a little time, but when you are in that role, make sure you come prepared. Make sure you know what you're talking about and you know your stuff, because that's really, really important. You can't just be there to be there. You want to be there and you want to make a difference and a change.
Very good. Let me ask a question to Ivelisse. Tell us what steps ABM is doing or does to attract high-performing technology professionals, especially women.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So honestly, at ABM, I think we've learned to acknowledge what's important to our candidates, especially women, right? And they offer a couple of things. So we have really good work-life balance opportunities at ABM, which is very attractive to not only women, but up-and-coming professionals and high-performing technology professionals. Aside from that, I think that ABM offers, we have the D&I councils and the different programs, but really the diversity is embedded into our culture, right? So it's one of the very first times that I've worked for a company that you really don't have to speak diversity because you see it, right? So every time we walk into a meeting or people meet, our team members, it's very obvious that we value the voice of diversity, because a lot of the value that we bring to the table as women or as people from different cultures comes from that experience.
So let me follow up with the same question to you. What do you think that you would do personally to give guidance to women that are joining your company?
Yep. So personally, I try to provide a lot of mentorship to the women that have joined our organization and really build that trust, right? Because it's easy to sit here at this table, all of us as leaders, and say, well, when you go into a room, I agree with you, Paula, we need to be prepared, right? But along the way, you face the hurdles, right? And I can look back at my career and think of the times that when I walked out of the room, maybe I just needed somebody to talk through that conversation with and help me understand how next time I can make it better so that I am more effective. And I was very blessed to have very good mentors along the way, right? And some of which are in this room today. So just providing that back, right? And building that trust and that bridge and saying, you know what, when you have that tough day, when you have the tough conversation, let's talk about it, because your voice matters and it will continue to matter, right? And I want them to hear what you bring to the table.
Very good. Is anyone else doing anything in your company to encourage women applicants, especially in the technology areas, or let's go beyond women. You mentioned diversity. Is there any sort of, DE&I programs in your companies that you're especially proud of, want to talk about?
I can start, right? We have the D&I councils, but just recently this year, what we did was we had an internship program, right? To start building that pipeline, not only for cybersecurity, but for ABM as a company. And then past the internship, again, building that relationship with these college graduates and saying, okay, we want you after you graduate, so what can we do to attract them?
Yeah, so I'll add to that. The community programs are a good way to do that. So going to the colleges and finding the STEM colleges, I mean, that is one of the things that we are looking at, is what colleges can encourage STEM programs for women, and recruiting directly from that, so building that trust. Also creating the community within certain areas, so going and talking as mentors to the younger kids, right? So I know in my kids' elementary school, starting from there, right, telling the little girls that are there, not to just see the technology leaders as men. They can also achieve all of these things, and how can we encourage them to bring them in science? So we did Pi Day. It's a kind of funny story. We did Pi Day where we would bring different kind of groups. So Scouts, Girl Scouts also participated in that, which was amazing. So what they did was they built small, programs on Raspberry Pis, and then came and presented, and our company hosted that. And that was really a fun way to kind of bring the community together and also encourage not just girls, all sorts of elementary to middle school, early high school type of kids to come participate. So
That's brilliant. Let me ask Crystal a question. I often hear women say that it's hard to get a word in when the room is full of men. How do you encourage women to to get their voices heard in those situations?
Sure. So one of the things that I always encourage is preparing, making sure that you go through whatever your presentation is going to be about, memorize it, make sure that you are capturing all the details, being factual, as we've spoke about before, and just making sure that when you're communicating clearly, with some sort of passion or confidence, I would say, just to make sure that they can trust the things that are coming out of your mouth, that they can understand the way that you're thinking, and that you're able to communicate clearly, so then you don't lose the audience. So another thing is understanding your audience as well and what it is that they're looking for.
Another thing we want to do is when any group, in any presentation or in a meeting, is not to apologize if you don't know. You don't need to apologize. You just need to say, let me look into that so I can get you really good information. I don't have the exact details you're looking for. I will get that for you. So when you go in with confidence and you go in with the ability to understand your information, you might not know everything. Somebody might throw you a curveball. It happens all the time. Happens to me too sometimes. Just don't apologize. You can't know everything. You're not expected to know everything. Just be confident in what you do know, and that will come across.
I had a mentor tell me one time that I had a habit of starting every sentence with, "I could be wrong, but," and I had to learn to stop doing that.
I had something similar. I think women tend to use "I'm sorry" to start the sentence and make a point. And I think we need to learn, pull back, assess, and then start, forget about "I'm sorry" words. It's just express what you're about to say.
those are great points. One of the things that I would like to also add is we as leaders, right, again, have this responsibility. And a lot of us sitting in this room have the responsibility to go around the table and ask for that feedback. How many people would just stay quiet, especially women, diversity groups? Just call them out if you're having a staff meeting or any kind of session like this, and we can just call out on certain people who are being quiet. You can see that they have thoughts, but they might not speak up.
One of the things that I would like to add as far as the communication piece is, beside getting feedback is very important, but also there are other tools out there that would help as far as the way that the woman communicates in a conference room or just to her peers or executive leadership or, junior employees. There's tons of information out there. When instead of saying, I'm sorry, change it to where you're saying, thank you. Thank you for waiting on me. Thank you for your patience versus saying, I'm sorry I had you waiting, or I'm sorry I didn't put this right, or, just change the way that you communicate so then you can get more respect for what you're trying to deliver.
And I think, as she mentioned, leaders, what we can do, one thing that I have always practiced is that if I'm in a room with my direct reports and I see people interrupting one another, I'll call it out and I'll say, let them finish what their sentence has been. I'll say, let's go back to the person you interrupted because I don't think they were through. Were you going to say something? Okay, we'll just move on a little bit. Paula, I have a question for you. How do you think that a woman should leverage her talents and experience while not making it about being a woman?
Yeah. So what's really important, I think, guys, is that, we are women, and that's an obvious thing, right? Or, pretty obvious. We're all women up here. And you don't have to lean on that when you're in these meetings and when you're trying to get into an executive role or a suite role. It really comes down to working as hard and knowing the information and understanding the information. I've been very lucky in my career. I've had extremely, really, really good male mentors. I've not ever had a female mentor, which, because maybe of my age, there weren't many. And so I have had some really great men in my life that have taught me a lot of great tools and tasks and understanding male behavior versus women. But make it about your knowledge. Make it about what you've completed in your life, what you've fulfilled in your job, and how you complete projects, and the knowledge that you have in special areas of the business. If you add value to your organization, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, but you have to add the value. You don't want to just add the value because you are a woman. You want to add the value for what you contribute.
Anyone else want to add to that? How do we make sure it's not just about being women?
Yeah, and I would add, Paula, to that, as women in leadership and having, teams that are part of our organization is setting those clear expectations up front, right, to the teams. So my expectation of my team members is, I need you to be prepared when you go in the room. If I put you in front of leadership, I have that confidence in you. You can absolutely do it, but I need you to get ready, right? It's not about the fact that you're new to the organization. It's not about the fact that you're a woman. It's about that I know that you can do it, and that's why I'm putting you in that position. And I think that when you set an expectation for your teams, and you hold them accountable, because you can set the expectation and then not hold them accountable, and it means nothing. And you hold them accountable, they will perform, they will work so much harder.
And remember that when you're a leader, their accountability is ultimately yours, right? So as much as you hold them accountable, you need to make sure you're holding yourself accountable too, because at the end of the day, if something fails, you failed as well. So that's part of being a leader, whether you're a woman or a man.
Any questions on that from the audience? I feel like I haven't asked you guys enough. Okay.
Kind of along the same lines, and it might already have this question coming up.
That's okay.
Did you ever feel like, especially earlier on, I think hopefully it's not as much of an uphill battle today, did you ever feel like you had to work twice as hard to get the same amount of recognition, and how did you keep that from discouraging you or getting frustrated that you could be everybody, because it shouldn't be about whether you're a male or a woman, it's who's best for the job, right? But I think sometimes, especially earlier on, it might have been tend to be overlooked more.
I have. And I think it's perception, because it wasn't because I didn't know the information, it was because I wasn't part of the boys' club. I didn't play golf. I didn't know, I wasn't big on baseball. I didn't know what the football team that played last week. I don't go fishing. I didn't have the same interests. as they do, right? I just naturally don't. I mean, I have a lot of interests. I would ask them if they liked polo, and they're like, what? You know, so I mean, I have interests. That is where it became difficult. So when I've learned to, while not being a huge fan, but being able to speak a little bit of that lingo, they started to listen more to me, like, hey, Paula knows about, this game that happened last Saturday, and then I would, kind of throw in there, hey, did you look at that new technology? And do you think it would really be good for our organization because of X, Y, and Z? It's building the relationships. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's building those relationships. So I had to learn, and I learned early in my career, it was about building those relationships with the men in the group, just as much as I did with the women when we would talk about, what handbag we want to buy. It's that same kind of thing. So did I have to work harder? No, I had to work differently. I had to kind of adjust how I worked with men versus women, but I do see how women feel that they do have to work harder, and they do if they don't try to build somewhat of a relationship.
What do you mean?
One thing, I will add to that. I agree with the relationship forming. I would also say that working hard and voices not being heard or things like that, is that an attribute of just women, or is that an attribute of our nature? Sometimes it is that attribute of our nature. Some people are geared not to, speak up in those kind of conversations, or feel a little bit out of place, whether it be a diverse group or not, right? Even I would argue that some males, I have mentored a lot of men in my organization, and they sometimes have a similar challenge. So I would argue a little bit saying, is it us just trying to understand how to build the relationship, to your point, how I can connect with other males or females, for that matter, coming from a different country. That was another thing that I learned here. I didn't know football. I didn't know, some of these things, and didn't go to high school here. So a lot of these camaraderies are coming from the high school and college football and such. So that was an uphill battle. So I would definitely say that was a little bit of how do I connect with the community here, right? That's what I would say. Just find out how we connect and start working towards those relationships.
And I will maybe just add a little twist to that. Early in my career, I was a single mom trying to raise a small child and build a career. And my boss at the time said, you just need to understand that because you leave every day at 5:30 to go pick up your child at daycare, your career is probably not going to advance as rapidly as the people that are staying here and working till 6:30 or 7 every night. And honestly, that proved to be wrong. And I worked at Exxon, it was a big company. And it proved to be wrong because when I was there, I made sure that I worked, I focused, and I did my work and did it well. And I got promoted every bit as fast as the people that were hanging out till 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. So I think the point is that, you just need to make sure that what you do it well. Any other comments on this or questions? Yes, please.
I'm probably from the same generation as you. I was at IBM, single parent, and I had some that would say that, and like you, and like what everyone says, I knew my stuff. Mm-hmm. And when people wouldn't give me a chance to talk, I made my way. I would interrupt them. And as a matter of fact, I had one, we were peers, the chief of police, and I was a chief as well, and he would call me, we had an agreement. He would either call me chief or doctor, and I would call him chief. We got into a meeting, he called me Denise. So I called him by his first name. He was furious. But after that, I got the respect that I deserved. But what I learned through all of that is that, just like today, walking in the door, I will make a way when there's not a way. Because for women, for so long, it was you wore a suit like men wore a suit, you wore a backpack, and you took on this masculine appearance. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I love my dresses. I like my heels just not too high. And I'm going to be me. And I will get the respect that I deserve. And I got promoted as a result because they saw me as, well, she's not a typical woman. And I wanted it to be, when I walk in, I'm just like everybody else. And it got there, it just took a while.
Good for you.
And real quick, so y'all know, I am a single mom, divorced. divorced about 7 years ago. And so I have two small children, 13 and 15. And I was not a CIO at the time when I got divorced. And I'm a CIO now. And I've been in an executive position since I was in my early 40s. So it doesn't matter, guys. You can be a single mom, you can be divorced, you can be widowed, but you can still do it. You can still do it.
And I would agree with that. Single mom too. But I would say one of the things, a piece of feedback I would give you is, and I don't know if you ladies would agree, but you just learn to grow a thick skin, right? If I look back earlier on in my career, my skin wasn't as thick as it is now. But, you know, you learn to, I always repeat this, but take the meat and spit out the bones, right? And just keep going. And if you're prepared and you know your stuff and you work hard, what's supposed to happen is just going to happen. Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
I was going to say that, you know, we all in management have an opportunity to have people work smarter and not harder, and not give accolades to people that are spending the 12 hours a day at work. And try not to do that yourself, which is tough for me. But I think that that's an opportunity we as women in management can do, is to set the pace for that kind of thing and not expect it. And really give accolades to folks that do leave on time. I had a friend that used to pretend that she was in a carpool. She was a single woman. She was a single woman, and all the women that had children would leave at whatever time they were supposed to leave, 5 o'clock. And she'd be sitting there working, and people would give her accolades because she was working. And so she just made up this carpool, and every day she left at the same time. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Anything else, ladies, before we move on to the last question? Okay, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A from you guys. But I wanted to ask all of you, so regardless of whether we're women or men, what should we be doing to stand out in an industry that is continually fluid and, by the way, is often biased?
I think in order to continue to stand out, you just, one, have to keep educating yourself, right? And staying up to speed with your space, right? Also, I think from an industry perspective, and I heard this earlier in the CISO Roundtable, and I repeat this to my team all the time, we have to understand the business, right? There can't be an expectation that you're gonna get promoted and you're going to just move up the ranks by just knowing your job. You have to understand how your company's operating, and so that you can continuously add value. Because at the end of the day, we can say we're women and we're all in professional careers for a reason, but you have to be continuously adding value to what you're doing, right? So that's it.
I'd agree. It's about delivering, your delivery. It's also about, again, back to relationships. So I'm very close to all the business leaders in all the different aspects of our business: accounting, finance, operations. I went on a field tour in Wyoming, and I've been on oil rigs. I've been, I make these relationships. So when something happens, even as a CIO, if something happens in an accounting area and a guy in the field has issues, he might call me, and then I get the ball rolling. It's how I stand out, is because people know who I am, because I'm a team. I'm a servant leader. How can I serve you? What can I do to make your job easier? Where am I failing? Where am I failing in this role? And I think building those relationships and people feeling confident that if I give this to Paula, or Paula's aware of it, we're going to be able to make a difference. She's going to make a difference. She's going to have this change happen. So building those relationships is a huge part of it. Because you notice that if you build a relationship with somebody and it isn't going well, everybody knows, well, they're hard to get along with and they're not a team player. It's the same way, guys. So, like attracts like. If you're positive and you build these great relationships, you're going to attract more of that, and you're going to bring that more in your career, and you're going to grow because people are going to want to work with you. That's how you kind of stand out. And then, of course, knowing your stuff. You got to know your stuff.
Yes, and in addition to that, one of the things that I would say is collecting feedback frequently. You don't have to wait until the compliance checks or the annual feedback. quarterly, you can just reach out to some of your peers, your mentor or whoever you work with closely, and just ask them how you're doing in your role. How can you better support them? What could you be doing better? Look at the different training that's out there as well. Annual, training, or, just looking at something on the different sites. I think you have like Udemy or Cybrary, or, the different things where you only have to pay about $20 just to learn a new technique or a new, tool or something. So just staying knowledgeable, again, in your space, collecting the feedback and building those relationships as well.
You asked bias. How do you remove bias? One of the things that I would say is that lead by example, right? If you are leading by example, you're doing the things that you're telling others to do, right? So if you are yourself biased, well, that's kind of hard, right? So how your team looks like, how you come across, how genuine you are, all the things are pretty visible. So I would definitely say lead by example, be yourself, be genuine with people. And that's something that people notice, and that would remove that bias that we are only favoring one person over the other, or one ethnicity, or one race. Whatever that is, your team, it is designed, how they come across, speaks volumes about you, yourself, and your team.
Let's open it up to the audience to see if you guys have any questions for us. We've got a captive audience here.
I'm sorry, I do have a question, because you said biased. How do you mean that?
Okay. I will ask the person who suggested the question what they meant
Bias
first.
meaning some people have bias towards men over women on certain questions. So
Gender bias.
It could be a gender bias. It could be any bias. Any bias. It could be sexual orientation bias. It could be the race bias. It could be any bias. I think that is a question. That is anything, right? It's just whatever their ego has an issue with.
And I think she got into a while ago the example that she used, which I've also spent a lot of time in oil and gas and have experienced it both there and even in consulting, that there is a natural tendency for there to be, and I'm not going to say good old boys club, but just a clique. People like to click. They form relationships, and they're the group that go out and do things together. And so, if you're not in that group, then how do you establish those relationships with those people? You have to make the effort. You can't just accept the fact that you're going to be out of the group and isolate yourself. That's not going to help your career at all. So you have to look for those opportunities to get to know them better, many times on their turf. So that's just the way that it is. Yes, ma'am.
For each of you, my question is, how have you provided an example of a weak link on a team that you've been on, and how did you address that as a leader?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll say that the first thing I've always tried to do if I have a weak link is I can't really say somebody's a weak link until I've given them an expectation to meet, right? And I can't listen to coming into an organization, especially, you get all this feedback on the current team members, right? But I can't set my mindset on whether you're going to deliver or not until I've given you something to deliver. I've given you a clear expectation, and you're either going to sink or swim. And then I'm having those constructive conversations with you. And I think when you set the expectation up front, people don't necessarily feel targeted, right? Because you've said, we've talked about this. This is what I expect you to deliver by this time, right? And then at that point, it's not me dealing with the weakest link. They're either going to deliver or they're not.
So what I've experienced in the past is having someone that I guess I'm deeming them as the weakest link in my mind. But one of the things that I did was I did give constructive feedback. I pulled them to the side, tried to have a personal conversation to see what may be contributing to it. Maybe there's some personal things going on. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to identify what that person's strengths are. And if they're not aligned with what their strength is, then I would like to find them a role or something that they can do that aligns better with what their capabilities are. Because sometimes they may not be interested, or it may not be a capability that they have had in the past. So instead of them spending time training on the job, let's find you something that you have more experience in, that you feel more comfortable performing in, and then maybe put you in that role and then see if you're still, considered the weakest link.
I would add to that feedback, definitely. One of the things that I learned a few years ago, and I wish I knew much earlier, this bias. So if you come across someone, or you got a feedback from somebody else, that certain person in your team or whoever is not performing well, or is not delivering well, or not working well with the business, somehow you create that bias, right? So there is something called in-group and out-group. I don't know how many of you know about this. Mentally, you create your in-group, and then you have your out-group. And knowingly, unknowingly, and it's unfair, you kind of make decisions based on that. And I've came across this concept a few years ago. And like I said, I wish I knew this earlier. But then you start noticing, and you knowingly not get into that trap, right? So you need to assess yourself whether it's a weak link or not. That's my first question. Sometimes I have found team members are overwhelmed. They're doing things that others are forcing them, or, urgency, we all know that. So things like that. But also step back and give them flexibility, because I feel like sometimes those work pressure, or, you talked about family pressure, or anything that is going outside of work that is prohibiting them from doing what they are supposed to be doing or not doing, either way. The goals are what we get to, right? So if you assign them those goals, these are the things that you need to achieve. How you do it, give them flexibility. But be very cognizant of the in-group and the out-group, guys. I just didn't know about it previously, and now that I know, I feel that I'm obligated to step back and assess it myself rather than trying to get the feedback from anyone.
You can still answer that question. We've got plenty of time.
If you have a weak link, you need to look within. If you're a leader, you have a whole lot of responsibility on your team, and if there's a weak link, you need to first look at you, and you need to think, where did I fail? Why does this person not performing the way that they need to perform? Because it's not always about them. It could be about your leadership style, your communication style with them. They may not know where to focus. You might think, I'm somewhat of a kind of a bull in a china shop, a very A-type, very a lot of energy, and I have team people on my team that are very just kind of go with the flow, just kind of sailing along on like a. And they see me coming and they're like, oh, so, and I'm aware, I'm self-aware. But if I ever feel like there's something going on in their performance, I take a step back and I go, okay, I need to pivot this a little bit. So when you have a weak link, and we're going to have them, and there's going to be many, many reasons, personal reasons, work reasons, I think the first thing that you need to do is look within yourself into why there's a weak link. What is your responsibility in that? Because I always tell my team, we fail as a team and we succeed as a team. Not one of us is failing and not one of us is succeeding. So if I have a weak link, we're all weak. So where do we fix that? So just look within.
I'm going to take the counter argument, but I first want to apologize for looking at my phone because my grandson was just born. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. So anyway, that's why I had the phone. So I apologize for that. There you go. But anyway, so I wanted to take a counterpoint here because I feel like when you do all these things that you guys talked about and that person isn't turning it around, then it's not fair to the rest of the team to allow that person to continue to be there. Sometimes you just have to coach them out. And I have been accused by my teams in the past of taking too long to do that. And I realize that you're trying to coach them, you're trying to help them, giving them other things to do. You try to be patient, but when you do finally deal with it, it makes the whole team like finally relax, and now they can get back to business. So sooner or later, sometimes you just have to make the tough decision. Okay?
And
Go
then
ahead.
just to add to that, I agree. You know, you work with them as much as you can, but we fail as a team. So what happens is it is an indicator for the entire group how your performance is and how that weakest performance is. And it tends to kind of bring down other people's morale as well, because if you're not taking any action across that, right? So I agree.
Other questions in the audience? Yes, ma'am.
My question is, why is it difficult for women to help other women to move up? Because I've had a personal experience where my boss was a lady, and actually we both reported to a different boss, a guy, and when she took over, then our then boss wanted to help me move up. And so he kept pushing me, saying, tell this lady, tell your boss to help you. But it turned out to be a total, for lack of a better way, a disaster. So, but I've seen that, and I've had friends and so many people complain about that's why it's difficult for other women to help women move up. And I get the fact that you have to know your stuff. You don't want to help the person because it's a woman, but there's still that, what do you call it, disparity.
Yeah.
You end up having...
I have witnessed that. But I will tell you, though, that I have witnessed it among men, too. It's almost like sometimes, a woman is afraid to help another woman because they view it as a competition. Oh, she's going to take my job. But I see men doing that, too. So it's really, to me, it's a sign of insecurity when the person's not willing to help somebody else move up. That means they're threatened.
Sorry. Go ahead. I'll be quick. The quick answer to that is ego. Look up ego. A lot of these issues, men and women, I've seen it with men and women. It's an ego thing. And women are, just to speak of women are in constant competition with each other in general, not just work. The way we look, the way we act, our weight, how we parent, everything. Work is no different. It's ego. How do you get past it? Again, it's perseverance. It's being committed to what you want to do and where you want to get to. Because I've had a woman in my life that was like that as well, and I knew my stuff. I delivered, and I grew those relationships with those people in the organization that could help me get further, because she wasn't going to.
No, I mean, that's similar to what I was going to say, is maybe it was your relationship with her, but I've experienced it on both ends where it was male and also female, where it seems more of a competition, especially in consulting. It always feels like that, regardless of male or female. So at that time, it might have just been the relationship, and also because sometimes we're just competitive by nature.
I won't repeat what the lady said, but I'll give you a word of encouragement, right? I think we've all experienced it at some point. I've been extremely blessed to not, I think I have the opposite problem, right? Currently, and in the last couple of organizations I've been in, I have, a lot of women around me and a lot of women in leadership, right, that are really encouraging other women, right, to come up. So I would offer this to you is, at the end of the day, if it didn't happen there, it can happen somewhere else. So just keep going, right? And have that perseverance, and just know that as long as you're doing everything you can do and you're continuously educating yourself and adding value, you'll find the right place for you. And maybe that just wasn't it, right?
I saw a meme the other day that said, and I won't forget it because I've used this term before, fake it till you make it. It said, face it till you make it. Sometimes you just have to keep facing it. Any other questions from the room? Yes, sir.
I was going to ask Paula a really tough question, but anyhow, it's obvious from just sitting back here listening to you all that, and I don't want this to sound wrong, that you all think differently than men do. If we had a group of men up here, the conversation would be totally different. And to say this, you all seem more perceptive. Okay, like Paula said, I know Paula well, but men sometimes are just quick to answer something and move on. You all seem very thoughtful in your thinking. Not to sound bad.
Thank you.
How, not that men aren't thoughtful, but how do you all feel that, you know, as women in general, women in technology, that your thought process differs from men in your same positions or along your careers?
So I can start with that, and I'll say I agree with you, right? I think that there is a difference naturally in our thought process. We're just wired differently, right? But I think it's important to acknowledge it and say it and have that level of confidence. You know, I've sat in a room before with a lot of men, and I'm just confident in saying, I need to process this. Right? So I may not have your answer right away, even when that's the expectation. Just give me a minute to process it so I can actually give you the answer that's worth it, right? And just saying it out loud and acknowledging it, acknowledging stereotypes exist, gender, inequality exists. So if we acknowledge it, we can deal with it.
So to help the men in the room out, get some more tangible things like where you all would think potentially differently. And then also, if you've ever taken a Myers-Briggs or anything, kind of say what your Myers-Briggs personality or whatever might be.
So, Mark, for me, it's really about, I think men in general want to be the first to answer, or the first person to know the answer. Where I think while women, we want to also be the first to know. We don't want to just give you an answer, right? We want to be very thoughtful and methodical about what that answer is, because we're about multitasking. And if we have to come back and do it again, it's not going to make us happy. So we are about giving the correct answer to begin with, and that's like with knowing your stuff. So for me, I might not have the answer right away, but I'm going to get you the answer, but I'm only have to give you the answer once. I'm not going to have to say, well, I think it's this. I'm going to say, hey, give me time to think about this, and I'll get back to you, but it's going to be the right answer. Where I think men, from what my experience has been, they'll go, hey, it's this, and then they'll come back, I did more research, and actually is this. We don't want to have to come back to you. We just want to just give it to you. So that's been a little bit of my experience, not good or bad. I know that everybody wants to be the first person to kind of win the race. We just win the race a little differently, or answer the questions a little differently. That's an example of mine.
One of the examples that I would give, how is this different, right? I'm gonna say the F word, right? Not what you're thinking, feeling. I feel like we feel the room sometimes. I don't know. I feel like this feeling concept, the touchy-feely that everybody, don't want to talk about in business sometimes, but what ends up happening is if you know how that other person is feeling as you're speaking, you're kind of reading that. And I feel like it would tell you a lot about what's going on. It would tell you how to connect with that person. We talked about that previously. But I feel like that's a little bit of differentiating factor that I feel that women are naturally wired to have that feeling, which makes us take a step back and say, let's think about this, and let's see how it makes the other person feel, whether you're giving feedback, whether you're in a C-suite room, or whether you're delivering a speech, whether you're doing, you're just kind of constantly scanning and thinking about that feeling, right?
And I'll add to that. I think your name was Mark?
Yes.
Okay, Mark. You said to give you some tangible things, right? So if you're the one in the room running the meeting, right, maybe level set that expectation up front if you have women in the room, right? When you're asking questions, I think something you can say is, you don't have to answer me right now. I want you guys to think about it, because you know that the women in the room are thinking about it, right? So then you're level setting an expectation that, we'll come back to this, or you're setting the agenda up front to say, these are the things we're going to come back and discuss, and allow the space for it. right? Because then nobody's competing to answer you first, right? And you're allowing the women to process it and the men to have their answer in their pocket already, right? So that's something tangible and when you're leading a meeting, right?
You have to be techie about this. I think what Paula said is men don't have a change management process. We have a roadmap. The other lady said that men are not.
We're SOX compliant on that.
I think it's a generalization, but I have noticed that men tend to be more eager or impulsive to raise their hand when the boss is asking for a volunteer to do anything. They very quickly want to, because they're just wired, I think, to want to succeed, and so they're the first to raise their hand. And women get left out because we're sitting there thinking, well, if I say yes, am I going to be able to meet this other commitment? Am I going to have time for this? Am I going to be able to do a good job? While you're thinking all these things, somebody already volunteered. Yes, ma'am.
To add to that, I think I had a lot of growing up to do when it comes down to taking actions on your own and just paving your own path. But just not, I guess to see, and maybe for others as well, so what would be your suggestions to kind of, what's the best route to go about? Do not say, oh yeah, I don't want to raise my hand just because I don't know the topic, but you know you're capable of doing it at a later point, doing more research, finding out what the best way is, instead of just raising your hand, say, yes, I can do this, just to bridge that fear of not knowing a topic 100%, right? Knowing enough that you can say, yes, I'm willing to do this, but so what would be the best way for women to actually bridge that fear?
My advice would be to try being a little bit more bold at times. Just take the risk. I mean, I don't think any of us got to the position we're in without taking risk. So just be brave and know that, no one's perfect. You might not get it perfect, but you're going to learn from it. And just be willing to just stretch yourself every now and then. That would be my advice. I don't know if you guys have something different to offer.
One of the things that I would add is I don't see anything wrong with you being more cautious on your response. Sometimes you need the other person that would be more bold, that would speak up, make the decision, but maybe you still add value by being able to say, this is how we actually execute it in the manner that needs to be executed. You don't always have to be the first person with the quickest decision, but it's kind of going back to just wanting to do it right. I've had business partners that want to jump straight off of the bridge, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing, all right, but this is how we should jump off if we're going to do it, so then we land securely and we can live for tomorrow, so that's just one of the things that I would add is you don't have to be the first person to respond all the time, but definitely having an idea on where you want to go or what the ultimate goal is a good thing too.
What would you tell your high school, college self or your high school, college daughter, like if you, knowing what you know now, or if, like, what was your career path? How did you get there? Maybe what was something you could have done differently to further your career earlier?
That's a hard. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She's a freshman in high school and eight, and my son is 13 in 8th grade. Wow. It's a hard question because what I tell my children is I want you to do something that you enjoy and what's fun. Don't just go into a career to pay your bills, because if you do something that you enjoy that's fun, you'll do well at it, right? But they do know that I have a pretty important position at my company. While they don't fully understand or care to understand at that age, they do understand that mommy's stressed out and busy and sometimes has to travel. And what I've instilled in my kids is what I want you to do as a woman, as a girl. My daughter said to me one day, I was driving in the car and I literally started bawling like, a Sicilian Italian mother does. And she said, Mommy, I know that I can take care of myself and I don't need anyone else to take care of me because you can do it. And I think that's what's important, whether you're a girl or a boy, that your children know that they need to depend on themselves and be successful with themselves, and that if they can do that and that they do that and they don't necessarily depend on anybody else, then they'll learn how to be successful in whatever that is that makes them happy.
I was going to say that I would advise my kids to take the opportunity, even though they don't know, go learn it. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to join a club that you have no idea about, but you would learn. So putting yourself out there, be confident that you will learn and you have the ability to learn, and go for it.
God, if I could go back to 17, I was actually already working at a big oil and gas company. And if I could go back and tell that person, just keep going, like you're going to make it. Just keep going, keep working hard, keep studying, keep showing up. And if you keep showing up, what's supposed to happen is going to happen, and your path is your path, right? That doesn't mean you don't work hard. That just means that when you have those hard days or somebody's not on your side, you're going to find those people along the way that are. And if you just keep going, like just keep swimming, you know?
So this is something that I'm actually really passionate about. I started my family very young. Actually, I think I was finishing my freshman year in college, to be honest with you. So I'm sure my mom wasn't as happy, but I still continued. I'm one of those that I started working when I was 16. I've always been big on having a job and trying to advance myself, regardless if I had a family. I still went to school. I still worked full time. But one of the things that I wish I would have been more cognizant of when I was younger is building on the skills that I was developing as I had these jobs and understanding what career path I could have taken with those jobs that I was working. Yes, I may be working at Ace Cash Express, but those skills that I learned there can transition to maybe me going into the banking industry, just from doing loans and cashing checks and things like that. You don't understand how that transitions. And so one of the things that I talked to my oldest about, who is now in college, is just making sure you have a resume, teaching them interview skills, as I was fortunate to receive from my parents, helping them to understand the entrepreneur side of business as well, just in case they want to start a business to help make ends meet while they're on campus. So it's just things like that, and just continuing to further yourself. Don't get caught in, this has to be my degree. My degree changed 3 times. And honestly, I really didn't know what I really wanted to do until I finished my bachelor's. And then I decided, I like security. So I'll go into IT security, even though I was already in IT before I even finished my degree. And so now I went back and got my master's in security, whereas my bachelor's was in business communication. So you'll find a way, you'll find your passion, you'll find what you're good at, and then you'll make that decision. But just don't be scared to change it. Don't be scared to ask for someone to guide you, and just try to leverage those skills that you build early on, because those will start to open doors for you as well.
I guess to wrap it up, I would say to myself, what's the hurry? Just enjoy the age that you are. And I was always in such a hurry to get a job, finish school, blah, blah, just why? Just enjoy where you're at. That's what I would say. But I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to thank this panel. I think the women did a great job. Thank you so much. I hope you guys got something good out of it, and we'll look forward to another one sometime. Thank you.